Happy New Year and welcome to another episode of Hance, the best storyteller in Texas podcast. We start every episode with the saying of the day. Chancellor, what do you have for us?
Saying of the day is pick your battles wisely. President Maduro in Venezuela, within the last month, has been on TV saying, "Come and get me." And that's the last guy you want to say that to. President Trump took him up on it. Mm-hmm. And late in the game, within 24 hours before they got him, he was trying to negotiate. His time had run out. And I want to talk about this and about Venezuela and what's happening. And, you know, Venezuela is about the same size as Texas. They've got right at 29 million people. We've got 31 million people. And so with the oil reserves they've got, they should be rich. They've got the most oil reserves in the world, and they should be a wealthy country. But it shows what happens when you adopt socialism. And this started really somewhat in the 80s, but sped up in the 90s when Hugo Chavez was elected president. And then he took vice president, took Maduro, and then Maduro was elected president in 2013. And they have run the country into the ground. They have, as I said, number one in oil reserves in the world. They've got the most oil reserves. And I was looking at a chart, and they had 303 billion barrels of oil that have not been produced. And Saudi Arabia is second with 267, then Iran with 208, Canada with 163, Iraq is fifth with 145, Russia is eighth with 80 billion, and USA is ninth with 56 billion. Now that's how many reserves they've got. But on the exports, on what they're doing now, with all those reserves, Venezuela is receiving $4 billion a year in oil exports. And Saudi Arabia, which has less reserves, is getting $181 billion per year instead of $4 billion. And Iran's getting 53, Canada 107, Russia 122, United States 125. But they've got the reserves, but they don't know what to do. And you've got socialism, and it just won't work. You know, Margaret Thatcher summed it up best when she said, socialism works fine till you run out of other people's money. When you run out of other people's money, you know, you're going to have a bad go of it. It's not going to work. Something you sent me, Sandy, showed the chart of the gross domestic product of Poland and of also Venezuela. And the two charts, this is great. The two charts, one of them goes up dramatically when they stop socialism and adopt capitalism and free enterprise. And that's Poland. And one of them goes down dramatically when they switch over to socialism. It won't work. It's never worked anywhere. And the people in New York City think, well, you know, that must have been good in Venezuela and Cuba and Russia, and where the standard of living is just nothing. Mm-hmm. And they elected a socialist, and that we'll see how that works. You know, we're going to have free subways, we're going to have grocery stores that are owned by the government, run by the government, and so he's going to be doing everything that he can to socialize the New York City, and he's a communist, and it's going to come home to haunt them. A lot of states, including Texas and Florida, are going to be trying to get the New York Stock Exchange moved to their states, and we have a Texas Stock Exchange set up in Dallas, and so a lot of companies could move here, and if you'll tax them long enough and bad enough, they'll move. And it goes back to Sam Walton said that people vote with their feet. If they don't like the way your store is treating them, they'll walk to some other store. They get in their car and drive and get out the next parking lot and go in another store. And it just won't work. And it's crazy that people think that it will. But it says something about the intelligence, some of the people, that they think, well, all this is going to be free. Somebody's got to pay for it. And that had not been discussed. You look at Maduro, this is a guy that did not graduate from high school and was a bus driver. Mm-hmm. Now he's getting in a fight with a developer from New York City, and being a developer in New York City, those are tough fights. Anytime you're developing something, you deal with the construction companies, the subcontractors, the city government, the state government, the federal government. So you got to deal with everybody, and you got to fight, and it's got to be tough. And they're referred to him as the clown. Mm-hmm. That he quit high school before he graduated, and his only education after that was he was educated for a few months in Cuba on socialism and communism, how it works and why it's good and everything. And he would follow. He got to be active in the party, the Socialist Party, and he would follow Hugo Chavez around, and he memorized some of his speeches, and he'd go give the speeches, and he was kind of the strong arm for President Chavez. He'd go get people in line and things like that. But he was literally referred to as a clown. He was a bus driver, and they turned the country over to him. Now, how stupid, and they realized that it got messed up. If they needed somebody to supervise on haircuts, he was their guy, But if they need somebody to run the government, it was just crazy that they thought that it would come out good. And of course, the last couple of elections, he lost those and still won because he had them rigged. And no one recognized of any governments of any source. The Iranians and Chinese and Russians and Cuba and North Korea recognized him. But the U.S. and the European countries did not recognize him. And he was involved in, you go back in Venezuela, it started many years ago. PDVSA is the oil company for the government there. And they were started in 1976. OPEC meetings were established in 1960. In OPEC, one of the founders was Venezuela. And there was the oil minister in Venezuela had a nephew that went to the University of Texas and worked part-time at the Railroad Commission. And he figured out what the Railroad Commission was doing and setting an allowable on how many days you could pump your oil well, and that way they were stabilizing prices. And he looked at it, and Texas didn't have that much oil compared to what originally became the OPEC countries. And he told his uncle about it, and they got busy and met with Saudi Arabia and the Iranians and Iraqis, and they set up OPEC. And that's how OPEC got started. I met my friends at OPEC that were from Venezuela. One was named Gonzalo Plaza, and Gonzalo was on the board of governors of OPEC, and they set all the standards, and then he became the head of information. He was in charge of all the press and information at OPEC. And I got to know him, and he was a great guy. He introduced me to a gentleman named Celestino Armas, who was a real gentleman and very smart, an engineer, and he had been oil minister at Venezuela. And they were first class guys, and they wanted to have good relations with America, but they could see what was coming with Hugo Chavez, and they didn't like it. And they both are now deceased. They would be pleased if they knew what was going on. President Trump had the press conference on Saturday and talked about various things. I do think the most important thing of that press conference was what Rubio said to other people around the world. Look, if this guy says he's going to do something, he's going to do something. And if he says that they're, firing a shot over the bow, I thought at first when he had all those ships in the Caribbean that he is trying to warn him, and that's true. I think it's what he started out doing. But when the guy started calling him crazy names and everything, it didn't work, and so it came to an end. It did show you how effective our military can be, and how they could keep a secret. I noticed one of the congressmen, a Democrat named McGovern, said he should have told us. If you tell 435 members of the House and 100 in the Senate, it's 535 people. Do you think they'll keep it quiet? No. They're going to tell somebody, and somebody will tell somebody, and the word's out. If you've got spies, you don't name the person spy. Snake Adams always said he had a cousin one time that was a spy in World War II, and he said he was so good and effective that when he died, they buried him in the tomb of the unknown soldier. I always liked that. Buried him in the tomb of the unknown soldier. He was that good a spy. Nobody ever knew his name. But why would people think that a bus driver and nothing? I've got friends that drive buses.
You drove a bus growing up.
Yeah, I drove a bus. But a bus driver that didn't graduate from high school was going to do a good job running your country. They're stupid to have elected somebody like that. And then he got in, and everything is going to be free. Mm-hmm. And they have the highest poverty rate in the world. It's gotten up to 90% at times. It's around 50 or 60% now of people that live in poverty. They didn't have planning on roads and things like that. In Caracas, it takes 2 and 3 hours to get to work and 2 and 3 hours to get home. The party leaders travel, in private planes, and they've got everything going their way, and they're the kings. Mm-hmm. And they get to spend whatever they want to, and everything's provided free for them. And plus the amount of money that Maduro has stolen, that's still yet to come out, and that he's hidden in different places. But President Trump, and rightfully so, pointed out that if you look at the resources of Venezuela, there should be enough money there that this country should be a strong country. But the thing that Trump said, we're going to run it and get things turned around. Now that's going to take some while. I mean, they didn't screw this thing up overnight, and it won't be turned around in a short period of time. And some people are a little nervous about that. But we will see what happens. The oil they have is very heavy, and it's hard to refine. We have one refinery here in the state of Texas that will take the heavy oil and can refine it pretty well. But if you look at the heavy oil that they produced, it's hard on the equipment, and so they had the American companies come in and some from other regions and developed the oil and gas industry, and then they confiscated it. And the New York Times had a story about when they confiscated it. It said, "This is a good formula." I couldn't believe that at the time. But
I think that's something a lot of people don't know or understand, is that there were large American companies there that were basically stolen by the Venezuelan government.
3 that I can name off the top of my head: Exxon, Cargill, which is the largest privately held company in the world. Mm-hmm. They had $180 billion last year in revenue at Cargill. They're huge. And Brian Sykes, a good friend of mine, we need to get him on the show sometime. He's a Texas Tech guy. He's the CEO of Cargill. And Cargill has about 165,000 employees worldwide. Wow. They're big. But they got thrown out of the country in Hilton, the hotel people, they got thrown out. Exxon got thrown out. Chevron has worked a deal that they got back in, and it was signed off on Biden. And Biden signed off on it, and then he, allowed them to go in to operate about 20% of the wells, and they had to update them and everything. And they're operational, and I think that's probably what will happen. In the revenue, some's to go to compensate foreign companies that have had money stolen from them, just taken from them, and others will try to upgrade the economy in Venezuela.
I think a big indicator of this change and what happened is the people celebrating, the Venezuelans celebrating the ousting of Maduro. That says a lot.
It does. I mean, they've lost 7 million people in the last 25 years that have moved, and they had enough money they could move. See, the people, socialism, the people get hurt the worst are the poor people. They thought they were going to get everything free. Hey, let's vote for this guy. He'll give us everything free. And they're not educated, and they vote for somebody that promises things they can't deliver. And if you look at Doral, Florida, where they have the Doral Open and everything, that's the largest group of Venezuelans. They started going in there and they liked it, and their friends and neighbors and relatives all came in. But I flew in, and I'm not going into any details on this, but I flew into Florida last week to go to the Orange Bowl, and that's the reason I'm not giving any details on it. But in flying in, we went into the private airport there in Miami, and I have never seen the number of Gulfstreams and Air Commanders and all kinds of jets and private planes. I mean, there were hundreds of them everywhere. And there were 3 different groups came into the FBO where we were while we were waiting on transportation, and they all spoke Spanish. And that's the jumping off part. If you go from Miami to Caracas, commercially it'd be about a 3-hour flight. But the U.S. has not flown into Caracas direct. You've got to go through Panama or some other place and get another airline. But Biden's the one that signed off on Chevron getting in and helping on producing some oil. But the Biden government didn't recognize Maduro. They realized that he was in there because of corruption and fixed elections.
They offered $20 million bounty for him.
And yes. And so, the Democrats, there's been a few things, but if I were them, I'd ignore it and continue to talk about health care or something else. But it might come up later as an issue, but this is going to be a long haul. But we didn't change Japan and Germany and South Korea overnight. It had to be an investment. And these people have money, but money needs to be, number one, not stolen from them. It needs to be reinvested for them in their infrastructure and everything. They hadn't done anything to the oil, production, and that's the reason they needed Chevron to come in and bail them out on some of it. But they're down to 0.4, 400,000 barrels a day rather than 2 million, and it's just because of the form of government that they've had that has never worked anyplace.
How do you think the rest of Latin America feels right now?
Well, I know Argentina, Milei, he's saying hallelujah, good, that's great. And some of the others are. Probably if you look at Colombia and Brazil, they're kind of looking at it. But if I were them, I'd be nervous. I'd be trying to work with Trump. I think one of the best things about Trump is that they're all, and this will add to it, they're all somewhat afraid of him. They don't want to, they're not going to be out there like Chavez calling him a coward and things like that, and and doing stupid things. But most of the guys, the Milei in Argentina has a degree in economics and has an advanced degree. We know something, But I'm just telling you, this is a guy that didn't graduate from high school, is driving a bus, and they turned the country over to him. You think, what happened? How can people be that stupid? But they were, and that's the reason they have poverty rates going everywhere from up to 90% to as low as 50%. When half of your population below the poverty line, you've got real problems. You know, that when Maduro, somebody advised him, he's not smart enough to think of this on his own, but somebody advised him to, during the Biden administration, to empty the prisons and the insane asylums and send them to the United States. Mm-hmm. And they did, and part of the gangs came, and they took over a couple of apartment complexes in Denver. Mm-hmm. And those people be rounded up. I still don't. There was someone in Dallas that is running for Congress said we've got to help Venezuelans, fight the U.S. government, and we've got to help them. What else they say? The ones that are here illegally. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's what the public wants, but I don't see that people that I know or bump into that those are stupid arguments.
There's a lot.
I'm amazed that sometimes this arguments I still go back to, defund the police. Mm-hmm. They yell for defunding the police, and the result was the public didn't believe that that's something that ought to be done. One other thing I want to mention: crime. If you look at the year of 2012, and this last year, Venezuela stopped keeping statistics, but in 2012 they had 13,080 murders in their country, and the United States is 10 times larger and had about the same number.
Wow.
The World Economic Forum, which is part of connection with the United Nations, they did a study of 140 nations on where tourism is important, and they ranked them on their ability to recruit tourists. And out of 140, Venezuela ranked 140. The uneducated bus driver didn't know how to recruit tourists, mm-hmm. and they didn't want to come down there and get robbed, and so it's not a safe place, and crime was very high, and it's just a bad situation. They've got a chance to turn it around, but this will not happen overnight. Mm-hmm. And if I worry about the Russians, the Cubans, Chinese trying to get little cell groups that will shoot at any American soldiers or anyone that's trying to help solve the problem.
What amazing execution by the American military. They sent some Delta Force guys in there and got him out.
Hey, they had over 150 airplanes involved. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lot of people right there. You're taking the mechanics and everybody, and it's a secret mission, and the military kept it secret. Mm-hmm. The operation was called Absolutely Resolve. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were absolutely resolved, and after Maduro, who is not smart, he's just stupid, saying things, calling Trump all kinds of names and everything, and then I think they evidently were surprised, when they came in and got him. But he went from one time on Friday morning, he is king, he is top guy. He could do whatever he wanted to. And by Sunday morning, he's in federal detention in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. His options are none and none.
Who will represent him?
They'll have somebody appointed to represent him. But I'm telling you, they have a good case. Mm-hmm. U.S. Attorney's Office and Attorney General, they would have made sure they had a good case before and it's in the Southern District. Anytime there's a criminal case filed in the Southern District, there's been a tradition of hiring the best, smartest young lawyers they can find. Giuliani, that's where he got his start in the Southern District.
When he prosecuted the mob,
yep.
mafia. Yeah.
Yep.
it'll be an interesting thing to follow. That's for sure. Yeah. But like you said, it's going to take some time in Venezuela.
That a friend of mine worked in the southern district of New York and was trying a hitman. And I've mentioned this thing before, but there was a hitman for the mob, and he'd killed 15 people or so, and they were prosecuting him, and he was a witness, and they came to ask questions to cross-examine, and one of the U.S. attorneys said, "Do you know who I am?" And the guy said, "No." And he said, "Do you know where I live?" And the guy said, "No." And he said, "That's all questions we got." You know, he wanted to make sure that he didn't have any memory of him. He wanted to make sure that he wasn't in bad shape.
We'd love for you to follow us on Instagram. It is at Best Storyteller Podcast. Would you like to remind everybody of our saying of the day?
Saying of the day is pick your battles, and that Maduro wasn't very wise, and Trump. You know, people that get in fights with Trump are not smart. I mean, it's not going to come out well. And to call him names like coward and come and get me and things like that just shows how stupid the guy was. And they had elected him, and he had stolen the last couple elections, but he had been elected for as somebody to lead their nation. And you get what you pay for.